I never told my parents or my brother about my success. I wanted to see how they treat a poor girl, so I posed as a humble, innocent daughter. But when I walked in, the first thing my mother said was, "You look tired. Still working that little job?" I was 32 years old, standing in the doorway of the house I grew up in, wearing a plain cotton dress I'd bought specifically for this visit. My hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No jewelry, no designer bag, just me. Or rather, the version of me they expected to see. "Yeah, Mom," I said quietly. "Still working." She didn't hug me. She stepped aside to let me in, her eyes scanning me from head to toe with that familiar look of mild disappointment. My father was in his recliner, barely glancing up from the television. My brother, Derek, was sprawling on the couch with his phone, and he gave me a quick nod before returning to his screen. "Derek just got promoted again," my mother announced, as if I'd asked. "Regional manager now. They're talking about moving him to corporate next year." "That's great," I said, setting my small overnight bag by the stairs. "And you?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Still at that? What was it? That little marketing firm?" I smiled. Yeah, still there. The truth was, I'd left that entry-level job 5 years ago. I was now the founder and CEO of a digital branding agency with clients across 3 states. My team had just closed a 7-figure contract with a national retail chain. I owned a loft in the city, drove a car I'd paid for in cash, and had more in savings than my parents had seen in their entire lives combined. But they didn't know any of that, and I'd made sure of it. I grew up in this house, in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. My childhood was ordinary in most ways. Decent schools, enough food on the table, a roof over my head. But there was always this undercurrent, this unspoken hierarchy. Derek was the golden child. The son, the one who would carry the family name forward, who would make something of himself. I was the backup plan, the one who was expected to find a nice husband, have kids, maybe work part-time if I needed to. When I graduated from college with a degree in communications, my father said, "Well, that's nice. Now you can help out with the church newsletter." When Derek graduated 2 years later with a business degree, they threw him a party and invited half the neighborhood. I stopped trying to impress them after that. I moved to the city, took a job at a small agency, and worked my way up in silence. I didn't call home with updates. I didn't post on social media. I didn't send photos of my new office or my growing team. I wanted to see what would happen if I just disappeared into the background of their expectations. And what happened was exactly what I thought would happen. They assumed I was struggling. They assumed I was barely getting by. And they treated me accordingly. "Dinner's almost ready," my mother said, heading toward the kitchen. "Derek, set the table." He didn't move. "Can't Jess do it?" "She just got here," my mother said, but her tone was uncertain, like she wasn't sure if that was a good enough reason. I walked into the kitchen and started pulling plates from the cabinet. My mother was stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce, her back to me. "How long are you staying?" she asked. "Just tonight. I have to get back tomorrow." "Always running off somewhere," she muttered. "You know, Derek's been here every Sunday for the past month. He makes time for family." I set the plates on the counter carefully, one by one. "I'm glad he can do that." "You could too, if you wanted." I didn't answer. I just kept setting the table. Dinner was what I expected. Derek talked about his promotion, his new office, the company car they were giving him. My father asked questions, nodded along, offered advice. My mother beamed. I sat at the end of the table, cutting my spaghetti into small bites, saying almost nothing. At one point, my father looked over at me. "So, Jess, you making enough to get by?" "I'm doing okay," I said. "If you ever need help, a loan or something." He trailed off, like even offering was exhausting. "I'm fine, Dad, but thank you." Derek snorted. "A loan, like she'd pay it back." My mother shot him a look, but it was half-hearted. "Derek, Don't be rude." "I'm just saying," he continued, leaning back in his chair. "She's been at that place for what, 6 years? And she's still doing the same thing. Maybe it's time to try something else. Or, find someone who can take care of you." The room went quiet for a moment. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my face neutral. "Maybe," I said softly. My mother perked up. "Are you seeing anyone?" "Not right now." "Well, you're not getting any younger," she said, as if that was helpful. "You should really think about settling down. Derek's girlfriend is lovely. They're talking about getting engaged soon." "That's wonderful," I said. After dinner, I helped clean up while Derek went back to the couch. My father returned to his recliner. My mother washed dishes, and I dried them in silence. At one point, she sighed. "I worry about you, Jess. You don't have to. But I do. You're out there all alone, working some little job, no husband, no kids. What kind of life is that?" I set the dish towel down on the counter. "It's my life, Mom." She looked at me, surprised by the firmness in my voice. Then she turned back to the sink. "Well, I just hope you figure things out before it's too late." I went upstairs to my old bedroom. It was exactly the same as when I'd left. Pale yellow walls, a twin bed with a floral comforter, posters of bands I didn't listen to anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from my assistant, 2 emails from clients, a text from my business partner asking if I'd reviewed the contract revisions. I answered them all quickly, efficiently. Then I opened my banking app and stared at the balance for a long moment. It was surreal, sitting in this room, in this house, pretending to be someone I wasn't. I thought about going downstairs and telling them the truth, showing them the photos of my office, my team, my life. But I already knew what would happen. They'd be shocked at first. Then they'd justify it. They'd say I got lucky, that I must have had help, that it wasn't real success, not like Derek's. Or worse, they'd be angry that I'd hidden it from them, that I'd made them look foolish. So I didn't. I just sat there, in the quiet of my childhood bedroom, and let the weight of their indifference settle over me like a familiar blanket. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was still quiet. I packed my bag, smoothed the comforter on the bed, and walked downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen making coffee. "You're leaving already?" she asked. "Yeah, I've got to get back." She nodded, not looking at me. "Drive safe." I walked to the door, my bag slung over my shoulder. My father was still asleep. Derek's door was closed. No one said goodbye. I stepped out into the cool morning air and walked to my car, a modest sedan I'd rented for the trip. I'd left my real car, a sleek Audi, parked in my building's garage back in the city. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house I grew up in. And then I started the engine and drove away. The whole way back, I thought about what I'd learned. It wasn't a surprise, not really. But it was confirmation. They didn't value me for who I was. They valued the idea of who they thought I should be. And when I didn't fit that idea, I became invisible. By the time I pulled into the city, the sun was rising over the skyline. I parked in my building's garage, took the elevator up to my loft, and walked inside. The space was open and bright, filled with light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. My awards were on the shelf by the door. My diplomas hung on the wall. My team's latest campaign mock-ups were spread across the dining table. I set my bag down and stood in the middle of the room, breathing in the silence. This was my life. The one I'd built. The one they didn't know about. The one they didn't think I was capable of. And I realized, standing there in the light of my own success, that I didn't need them to see it. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their praise. I just needed to decide what to do next. The decision came to me slowly, like water finding its way through cracks in concrete. For 3 weeks after that visit, I went through my routine. Morning meetings with my team, client presentations, strategy sessions, conference calls that stretched into the evening. I was good at my job, exceptional even. My business partner, Marcus, liked to joke that I could sell ice to someone living in Antarctica. But the truth was simpler than that. I understood people. I understood what they wanted to hear, what they needed to believe about themselves, and how to give them just enough to make them feel seen. It was a skill I'd learned young, growing up in a house where being seen meant being useful. But something had shifted during that visit home. The performance I'd put on, the humble daughter, the struggling career woman, the invisible child, had revealed something I'd been trying to ignore for years. My family didn't just fail to see me, they actively chose not to. And that choice wasn't about me. It was about them. About maintaining a story that made them comfortable. Derek was the success. I was the cautionary tale. And as long as I played my part, the story worked. I was done playing my part. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I got the call. I was in my office, reviewing a pitch deck for a new client, when my phone buzzed. The screen showed my mother's name. I stared at it for a moment, surprised. She rarely called. I answered. "Hi, Mom." "Jessica." Her voice was tight, clipped. "I need to talk to you about something." I leaned back in my chair. "Okay, what's going on?" "It's Derek. He's having some financial trouble." I waited. She continued. "He made some investments that didn't pan out, and now he's behind on his mortgage. Your father and I have been helping him, but we can't keep covering everything. We're retired, you know. We don't have endless resources." I felt a strange calm settle over me. "I'm sorry to hear that." "We were hoping you could help." I blinked. "Help how?" "Well, a loan. Just to get him through the next few months until his bonus comes through. Maybe 5 or 10,000. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." I sat up straighter. "Mom, you just told me 3 weeks ago that I was barely getting by. You asked me if I needed a loan from Dad." There was a pause. Then she said, "Well, yes, but we know you're resourceful. You always find a way to make ends meet. Derek's situation is more serious. He has a house, a future. He can't lose everything because of one mistake." I closed my eyes and counted to 5. When I opened them, I was looking at the framed photo on my desk. Me and my team at our company retreat last year, standing on a beach in California, laughing. "I can't help him, Mom." "Jessica, please. He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. But that didn't seem to matter when you assumed I was struggling and didn't offer to help. Or when you let him make jokes about me at dinner. Or when you told me I needed to find someone to take care of me." Her voice went cold. "That's not fair. We've always supported you." "No, you haven't. You've tolerated me. There's a difference. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude is exactly why you're in the situation you're in. You've always been so difficult, so stubborn. You could have had a nice life if you'd just listened to us. But no, you had to go off and do things your own way, and now look where you are." I almost laughed. It was so perfectly her. The circular logic, the blame, the assumption that my life was a failure because it didn't look like the one she'd imagined for me. "I have to go, Mom." "Jessica?" I hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. It was an email. To my parents. To Derek. And by the time I finished, I knew exactly what I was going to do. That weekend, I drove back to Columbus. But this time, I didn't rent a sedan. I drove my Audi. I wore a blazer and tailored pants. My hair was down, styled. I looked like the person I actually was. And when I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, I saw the curtain in the front window twitch. My mother opened the door before I even reached it. Her eyes went wide. "Jessica?" "Hi, Mom." She looked past me at the car, then back at me. "What?" What are you doing here? I thought we should talk. Can I come in? She stepped aside, still staring. My father was in the living room. Derek was there too, sitting on the couch, looking uncomfortable. They both looked up when I walked in. "Hey," Derek said, his tone uncertain. I smiled. "Hey." My father frowned. "What's going on? Your mother said you were rude to her on the phone." "I was honest with her," I said. "There's a difference." I set my bag down on the coffee table and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed copies of things I'd never shown them. Articles about my company, photos of my office, a list of my clients, a printout of my most recent bank statement, with certain details redacted but the balance visible. I handed the folder to my father. He opened it slowly, his brow furrowed. My mother leaned over his shoulder. Derek stood up and came closer, peering at the papers. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, my father looked up at me. "What is this?" "That's my life," I said. "The one you assumed didn't exist. The one you never asked about." My mother's face went pale. You own a company?" "I founded it 5 years ago. We have 23 employees now. We work with national brands. Last year, we grossed over $3 million in revenue." Derek was staring at the bank statement. This is real?" "Yes." My father set the folder down on the coffee table, his hands shaking slightly. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me if you thought I had nothing. And I got my answer." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Jessica, that's not fair. We've always loved you." "Have you?" I asked quietly. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you've always loved the idea of me fitting into a specific box. The daughter who gets married, has kids, maybe works part-time at something safe and small. But when I didn't do that, when I built something on my own, you didn't see it. You didn't even look." "We didn't know," my father said. "You didn't ask. There's a difference." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "So you just let us think you were broke?" "I let you assume what you wanted to assume. And you assumed I was failing because that fit the story you'd already decided about me." My mother sank into a chair. "I don't understand. Why would you do this? Why would you hide all of this from us?" "Because I needed to know the truth. And now I do." There was a long silence. Then my father cleared his throat. "So, you're successful. That's wonderful, Jess. Really, we're proud of you." I looked at him, at the way his eyes kept darting to the folder, at the forced brightness in his voice. "Are you? Or are you just surprised?" He didn't answer. I turned to Derek. "Mom called me last week and asked me to loan you $10,000. She said you made some bad investments and you're behind on your mortgage." Derek's face went red. "Mom, you didn't." "I was trying to help," she said defensively. "She told me you were in serious trouble," I continued, "that you might lose everything. But when she thought I was the one struggling 3 weeks ago, she didn't offer me a dime. She just told me I should find a husband to take care of me." My mother stood up. I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did, and that's fine. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to make something very clear." I picked up my bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. I handed it to Derek. He opened it, his eyes widening. $10,000, I said. "That's the loan Mom asked me for. It's yours. No strings attached. You don't have to pay me back." Derek stared at the check, then at me. "Jess, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, but I want you to understand something. This isn't about the money. It's about the principle. When you thought I was struggling, you made jokes about me. You dismissed me. You acted like I was a burden. But the second you needed something, Mom called me. And that tells me everything I need to know about how this family works." My father's voice was hard. That's not fair, Jessica. We're a family. Families help each other. Do they? I asked. Because it seems to me that you help the people you think are worth helping. And for a long time, you didn't think I was worth it. My mother was crying now, her hands covering her face. Please don't do this. Please don't ruin our family over this. I'm not ruining anything, Mom. I'm just telling you the truth. And the truth is, I don't need you to see me anymore. I don't need your approval. I don't need your validation. I spent years trying to earn it, and I finally realized it was never going to come. So I stopped trying. I looked at Derek, who was still holding the check. Keep it. Use it. I hope it helps. But don't think for a second that this means things are okay between us. Because they're not. And they won't be until you understand what you did. He looked down. I didn't know, Jess. I swear. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. None of you did. Because it was easier to see me as the failure. It made you feel better about yourselves. I turned to leave, but my father's voice stopped me. Where are you going? Home. To my real life. The one I built without you. Jessica, wait. My mother stood up, wiping her eyes. Please, can't we talk about this? There's nothing to talk about, Mom. I came here to show you who I am, and now you know. What you do with that information is up to you. I walked to the door, my hand on the knob. Then I turned back one more time. For the record, I'm not angry. I'm just done. Done pretending. Done shrinking myself to fit your expectations. Done waiting for you to see me. I see myself, and that's enough. I opened the door and stepped out into the afternoon light. The air was cool, crisp. Fall was coming. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Please come back inside. Let's talk about this. I deleted it. Another text from Derek. I'm sorry, Jess. I really am. I didn't respond. I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw my mother standing in the doorway, watching me leave. My father appeared beside her. Derek was behind them, still holding the check. I kept driving. By the time I reached the highway, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Lightness. Like I'd set down a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my family would reach out, or if they'd retreat into their old patterns, or if this would be the thing that finally broke us apart for good. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who sat at the end of the table cutting her spaghetti into small bites, saying almost nothing. The one who cleaned up after dinner while her brother went back to the couch. The one who listened to her mother's criticisms and her father's dismissals and absorbed them like they were facts instead of opinions. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who didn't need permission to take up space. I drove back to the city as the sun set behind me, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The skyline rose up ahead, sharp and bright against the fading light. I thought about my loft, my office, my team. I thought about the life I'd built, piece by piece without anyone's help or approval. And I thought about the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind for weeks, ever since I'd driven away from my parents' house the first time. What now? The answer was starting to take shape. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving them wrong or making them regret their choices. It was about something simpler, something more honest. It was about living fully, loudly, unapologetically. It was about building the life I wanted, not the one they thought I should have. And it was about surrounding myself with people who saw me, really saw me, and valued what they saw. When I got back to my loft, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus. How did it go? I smiled and typed back, Better than expected. Good. Ready to talk about the new pitch? Always. I set my phone down and took a sip of wine. The city stretched out below me, a grid of lights and movement and possibility. Somewhere out there, people were building their lives, making choices, taking risks. And I was one of them. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run. The streets were quiet, the air cool and damp. My breath came in steady clouds as I moved through the empty sidewalks, past coffee shops that were just opening, past people walking their dogs, past delivery trucks unloading crates of produce. I thought about my family. I thought about the look on their faces when I'd handed Derek that check. I thought about my mother's tears, my father's confusion, Derek's shame. And I realized something. I didn't hate them. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just didn't need them. Not in the way I used to. Not in the way I'd thought I always would. That realization was freeing. It meant I could make choices based on what I wanted, not what I thought I owed them. It meant I could build my life without the constant background noise of their expectations. When I got back to my loft, I showered, dressed, and headed to the office. My team was already there, gathered around the conference table, laptops open, coffee cups scattered across the surface. "Morning, boss," Marcus said, grinning. "You look like someone who just won a prize." "Maybe I did," I said, setting my bag down. We spent the morning working on a new campaign for a client in the tech industry. It was challenging work, the kind that required focus and creativity and a willingness to take risks. I loved it. I loved the energy in the room, the way ideas bounced around, the way we built something together that was bigger than any of us individually. This was my family now. These people. This work. This life. At lunch, I stepped out to grab a sandwich. As I walked down the street, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, then answered. "Hi, Mom." "Jessica." Her voice was quiet, tentative. "Thank you for answering." "Of course. I've been thinking about what you said, about everything, and I want you to know that I'm sorry. I didn't see how we were treating you. I didn't see how it must have felt." I stopped walking. People flowed around me on the sidewalk, but I stood still, the phone pressed to my ear. "Okay," I said. "I know it's not enough," she continued. "I know an apology doesn't fix everything, but I wanted you to know that I heard you, and I'm trying to understand." I closed my eyes. "I appreciate that, Mom. Can we try again? Can we start over?" I thought about it, really thought about it. And then I said, "I don't know. Maybe. But it has to be different this time. I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm not going to make myself smaller so you can feel more comfortable. If we're going to have a relationship, it has to be based on who I actually am, not who you want me to be." "I understand," she said. "I'll try. I promise I'll try." That's all I can ask. We talked for a few more minutes. She asked about my company, and I told her about it. Not everything, but enough. She listened, really listened. It was strange, hearing her ask questions instead of making assumptions. But it was also something. A start, maybe. When we hung up, I stood there on the sidewalk for a moment, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over me. I didn't know if things would change. I didn't know if my family could really see me differently. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to wait around to find out. I had a life to live. That evening, I met a friend for dinner. Her name was Rachel, and we'd known each other since college. She was one of the few people who knew the whole story. The family stuff, the business, all of it. We sat in a corner booth at a small Italian place, sharing a bottle of wine and a plate of bruschetta. "So you really did it," she said, shaking her head in amazement. You drove over there and told them everything. I did. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free, lighter, like I finally let go of something I'd been holding on to for way too long. Good, she said, raising her glass. You deserve that. We clinked glasses and drank. Rachel leaned back in her chair, studying me. You know what I think? What? I think this is just the beginning. I think you're about to do something even bigger. I laughed. Like what? I don't know, but you've got that look. That I'm done playing small look. And when you get that look, things happen. She wasn't wrong. Over the next few weeks, I started thinking bigger. Not just about my business, but about my life. I started saying yes to things I'd been putting off. I traveled to a conference in New York and pitched a partnership with a company I'd admired for years. I hired 2 new team members and promoted one of my junior designers to a senior role. I started working with a business coach to map out a 5-year growth plan. And I started dating again. Nothing serious, just casual coffee dates and dinners with people I met through friends or work events. It felt good to put myself out there, to be seen as the person I actually was instead of the person I thought I needed to be. But through it all, there was a nagging question in the back of my mind, one I couldn't quite shake. What did I really want? Not what my parents wanted for me. Not what society expected. Not what looked good on paper. What did I want? I started keeping a journal. Every night before bed, I'd write down my thoughts. At first, they were scattered and vague. But slowly, patterns started to emerge. I wanted freedom. I wanted autonomy. I wanted to build something that mattered, something that made a difference. But I also wanted connection. Real connection, with people who saw me and valued me for who I was. And I wanted to stop running from the parts of myself I'd been taught to hide. One night, I was sitting in my loft, the journal open on my lap, when I wrote something that surprised me. I want to forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve to let go of the anger. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I closed the journal and set it on the table. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending everything was okay. It just meant releasing the grip that anger had on me. It meant choosing to move forward without the weight of resentment dragging me down. I didn't know if I was ready for that yet, but I knew it was something I wanted to work toward. A few weeks later, Derek called. It was late on a Thursday night, and I was just finishing up some work at the office. When I saw his name on the screen, I hesitated. Then I answered. Hey, Jess. His voice was uncertain, almost shy. Is this a bad time? No, it's fine. What's up? I wanted to talk to you about everything, about what happened. I leaned back in my chair. Okay. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we treated you. And you were right. I was a jerk. I made assumptions. I didn't bother to ask you about your life because I didn't think it was worth asking about. And that was wrong. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I deposited that check, he continued. It helped. A lot. More than you know. And I've been trying to figure out how to thank you, but I realized a thank you isn't enough. So I wanted to ask you something. What? Can I take you to lunch? Just the 2 of us. I want to hear about your life, your real life. I want to know who you are, not who I assumed you were. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, not resentment. Something softer. Something that felt a little like hope. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. We made plans to meet the following week. When I hung up, I sat there in the quiet of my office, staring at the city lights through the window. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not a dramatic transformation, but small, incremental steps. Conversations that were uncomfortable but honest. Relationships that required work but were worth the effort. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe Derek would show up to lunch and fall back into old patterns. Maybe my parents would never really change. Maybe I was setting myself up for disappointment. But I was willing to find out. Because the alternative, cutting them off completely, walking away and never looking back, felt like letting them win. It felt like letting their failures define me. And I was done with that. I shut down my computer, grabbed my coat, and headed home. The streets were quiet, the night air cool. As I walked, I thought about the journey I'd been on over the past few months. The visit home, the confrontation, the conversations that followed, the slow, tentative steps towards something that might, someday, resemble understanding. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no neat resolution, no moment where everything suddenly made sense. But there was movement, progress, a sense that I was finally moving in the right direction. When I got back to my loft, I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably asleep. Derek was probably scrolling through his phone, thinking about his mortgage and his mistakes. And I was here, in this space I'd created for myself, living a life they were only just beginning to understand. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if my family and I would find a way back to each other, or if this was as close as we'd ever get. But I knew one thing for sure. I was okay either way. Because I'd found something more valuable than their approval. I'd found my own. The lunch with Derek happened on a Saturday afternoon in early October. We met at a cafe in German Village, a neighborhood halfway between Columbus and the city where I lived. It was neutral territory, a place where neither of us had history or expectations weighing on us. I got there first. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching people walk by with their dogs and shopping bags. The leaves were starting to turn, splashes of red and gold against the gray sky. There was something melancholy about fall, but also something hopeful. Everything was changing, dying back, but you knew it would come back again. Derek arrived 10 minutes late. He looked different than he had at the house. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a little too long. There were shadows under his eyes. He spotted me and raised a hand in an awkward wave, then came over and sat down across from me. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He ordered a sandwich and a soda. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that fills up with all the things you're not saying. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Thanks for coming." "Of course. I wasn't sure you would." I took a sip of my coffee. "I almost didn't." He nodded, looking down at his hands. "I've been trying to figure out what to say to you. I've rehearsed this conversation in my head like 50 times, but now that we're here, I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth," I said. "That's usually a good place." He looked up at me, his eyes searching my face. "The truth is, I didn't see you. For years I didn't see you, and I didn't realize I wasn't seeing you because it was easier not to. Does that make sense?" It does. When we were kids, I was always the one getting attention, the one mom and dad focused on, and I liked it. I liked being the golden child. It made me feel special. But I never stopped to think about what that meant for you. I never asked myself how it felt to be the one who wasn't getting that attention. He paused, rubbing his temples. And then when we got older, it just continued. I got promotions, and they celebrated. You did your thing, and they barely noticed. And I went along with it because it benefited me. I never questioned it. I never stood up for you. No, you didn't. And at dinner that night, when I made those jokes about you, God, Jess, I'm so ashamed of that. I was trying to be funny, trying to impress Dad, and I didn't think about how it would make you feel. I didn't think about you at all. I set my coffee down carefully. Do you know what the worst part was? It wasn't the jokes. It was the fact that no one stopped you. Mom and Dad just sat there. They let you talk about me like I was a failure, like I was a burden, and they didn't say a word. His face crumpled. I know. And when I sat there and took it, when I didn't defend myself, it wasn't because I agreed with you. It was because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how far they'd let you go. And you went pretty far, Derek. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was my brother. I'd known him my entire life. We'd shared a house, a childhood, a family. But sitting across from him now, I realized how little I actually knew about who he was, and how little he knew about me. I believe you're sorry, I said. But sorry doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. I know, I'm not asking for that. I want to do better. I want to know you, the real you, not the version I made up in my head. The waitress brought his sandwich. He picked at it absently, not really eating. I watched him for a moment, then said, "Okay, you want to know me? Ask me something." He looked up, surprised. "What?" "Ask me something about my life, something real." He thought for a moment. "How did you start your company?" I leaned back in my chair. I was working at a small agency right after college. I was good at what I did, but I kept hitting a ceiling. My boss was one of those guys who loved taking credit for other people's work. I'd come up with a campaign, he'd present it to the client as his own idea, and I'd sit there in the meeting watching it happen. After about 2 years of that, I realized I had two choices: keep letting him take advantage of me, or leave and do it on my own. So you left. So I left. I had about $8,000 saved up. I rented a tiny office space, bought a used desk and a laptop, and started reaching out to people I'd worked with before. Small businesses, mostly. Boutiques, local restaurants, people who needed help with their branding but couldn't afford the big agencies. I worked 16-hour days for the first year. I lived off ramen and coffee. But slowly, I started building a client base. And once I had that, I could hire my first employee, and then another, and then another. "That's incredible," Derek said. "It was terrifying," I corrected. There were so many nights when I thought I'd made a huge mistake, when I thought I was going to fail and have to go crawling back to some corporate job. But I didn't. I kept going, and eventually, it worked. He nodded slowly. "Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell Mom and Dad?" "Because I knew what would happen. They'd find a way to minimize it. They'd say I got lucky, or that it wasn't a real business, or that I should be more careful because it could all fall apart. They'd make it about them and their fears instead of about me and what I'd accomplished." "Is that really what you thought they'd do?" "It's what they've always done, Derek. Every time I tried to share something I was proud of, they found a way to turn it into a warning or a criticism. So I stopped trying." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't know that. I didn't know that's how you felt." "You never asked." "You're right. I didn't." We sat there in the soft light of the cafe, the sounds of other conversations washing over us. I thought about all the years we'd spent in the same house, the same family, moving through our lives on parallel tracks that never quite intersected. And I wondered if it was too late to change that. "Can I ask you something now?" I said. "Of course." "Why did you really call? Was it just guilt, or is there something else?" He looked down at his sandwich, then back at me. "Honestly, both. I felt guilty. I felt like I'd been an asshole and I needed to fix it. But also, I've been thinking a lot about my life lately, about the choices I've made, and I realized that I've been coasting. I got the promotions because I was supposed to get them. I bought the house because that's what you do. I've been following this script that someone else wrote, and I never stopped to ask myself if it's what I actually wanted." "What do you want?" "I don't know," he admitted. "And that scares the hell out of me. But I look at you and you seem so sure, so confident. You built something from nothing and you did it on your own terms. I guess I wanted to understand how you did that. How you knew. I smiled, but it was a sad smile. I didn't know, Derek. I was terrified most of the time. I still am sometimes. But I decided that being terrified and free was better than being comfortable and trapped. And I think that's the difference between us. You chose comfort. I chose freedom. And now I'm losing the comfort, he said quietly. The investments I made, the mortgage I can't pay, it's all falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. Maybe you're not supposed to fix it. Maybe you're supposed to let it fall apart and see what's left when the dust settles. He looked at me, his eyes red. Is that what you did? In a way. I let go of the version of myself that Mom and Dad wanted me to be. And once I did that, I could finally become who I actually was. We talked for another hour. He told me about his job, the pressure he felt to keep climbing the ladder even though he wasn't sure where the ladder was going. He told me about his girlfriend, how she wanted to get engaged, but he kept stalling because he wasn't sure he was ready. He told me about the investments, the ones he'd made because a coworker told him they were a sure thing, and how losing that money had made him feel like a failure. And I listened. Really listened. Not to judge, not to fix, just to hear him. When we finally left the cafe, the sun was starting to set. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, the kind of sunset that makes you stop and stare. We stood on the sidewalk, facing each other. Thank you, he said, for coming, for talking to me, for not giving up on me. I haven't decided if I'm giving up on you or not, I said. But I'm willing to see where this goes. He laughed, a short, surprised sound. Fair enough. We hugged, awkwardly at first, then more genuinely. When we pulled apart, he said, "Can we do this again? Not tomorrow, but sometime?" "Yeah," I said. "We can do this again." I drove back to the city as the sun disappeared below the horizon. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did it go? I typed back, better than expected, complicated, but better. Good. See you Monday. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch staring at the ceiling. I felt drained, emotionally wrung out. But I also felt something else. A tentative hope, the kind that's fragile and uncertain but still there, glowing faintly in the dark. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and life. I threw myself into a new campaign for a client in the beauty industry. My team and I brainstormed for hours, filling whiteboards with ideas, debating taglines, refining visuals. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. And in the quiet moments, I thought about my family, about Derek and the conversation we'd had, about my mother and the phone call where she'd apologized, about my father, who still hadn't reached out. I wondered if he ever would. One evening, I was working late at the office when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Jessica." It was my father's voice. Gruff, uncertain. "Dad, I wanted to call, to talk." I set down my pen and leaned back in my chair. "Okay. I've been thinking about what you said, about how we treated you, and I want you to know, I didn't mean to make you feel invisible. I didn't realize that's what we were doing. But you did it anyway." "Yes, we did." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, the faint sound of the television in the background. "Your mother and I, we had a certain idea of how things were supposed to go," he continued. "Derek was the son. He was supposed to carry on the family name, build a career, all of that. And we thought you'd get married, have kids, be happy. We didn't understand that you wanted something different, that you were capable of something different. I tried to tell you," I said, "not with words, but with actions. I went to college. I got a job. I moved to the city. But you never asked what I was doing. You just assumed I was failing." "I know," and I'm sorry." "Are you?" I asked. "Or are you just sorry because you found out I'm successful? Would you be calling me if you still thought I was broke?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know. Maybe not. And that's something I have to live with." I closed my eyes. "At least you're honest." "I'm trying to be. I'm trying to do better. But I don't know if it's too late." "I don't know either, Dad." "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you hate us? Your mother and me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No, I don't hate you. I'm just tired. Tired of trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Tired of feeling like I'm not enough. Tired of shrinking myself to make you comfortable." "I never wanted you to shrink yourself." "Maybe not consciously. But that's what happened. And now I'm trying to figure out how to move forward. How to build a life that feels authentic, even if it doesn't look like the one you imagined for me." I'm proud of you, Jess. I know I didn't say it before, but I am. The words hung in the air between us. I wanted to believe them, but I also knew that pride alone wasn't enough. Not after everything. "Thank you," I said finally. "That means something." Can we try to fix this? As a family? I don't know. Maybe, but it has to be different. You can't just say you're proud and expect everything to go back to normal. You have to show me. You have to see me, the real me, not the version you wish I was. "I'll try," he said. "I promise I'll try." We talked for a few more minutes, and then we hung up. I sat there in the empty office, the city lights glowing through the windows, and felt the weight of the conversation settle over me. It wasn't resolution. It wasn't closure. But it was something. Over the next few months, things shifted. Slowly, incrementally, but noticeably. Derek and I started having lunch every few weeks. He asked questions about my work, my life, my plans. And I asked him questions too. About his job, his relationship, his dreams. We were learning to see each other as adults, as individuals, instead of as the roles we'd been assigned in childhood. My mother called more often. She'd ask about my business, and I'd tell her about new clients or challenges I was facing. She'd share stories about her friends, her volunteer work, her garden. The conversations were still a little stiff, a little formal, but they were real, and that mattered. My father was slower to come around. He called a few times, always brief, always awkward, but he was trying, and I could see the effort, even if it wasn't perfect. And as for me, I kept building. My company grew. We landed a major client in the tech industry, a contract that would keep us busy for the next 2 years. I promoted Marcus to partner and brought in a new creative director. We moved to a bigger office space, one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. I also started dating someone seriously for the first time in years. His name was Adam, and he was a graphic designer I'd met at a conference. He was kind, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in my work. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He didn't try to fix my problems or offer unsolicited advice. He just showed up. It was refreshing. One evening, we were having dinner at my loft. I'd cooked, badly, and we were laughing about the slightly burned chicken when my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Can we plan a family dinner? All of us together." I stared at the message for a moment. Adam noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked. "My mom wants to have a family dinner, all of us together." "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Nervous, I guess. It's been months since I saw them all at once, and the last time didn't go so well." "Do you want to go?" I thought about it. "I think so. I think I'm ready." He smiled. "Then go. And if it's terrible, you can always leave." That's true. I texted my mother back. "Okay, let me know when and where." Her response was almost immediate. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll let you know." The dinner was planned for the following Saturday, my parents' house. My mother insisted on cooking, said she wanted to make my favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables. I hadn't had that meal in years. When I arrived, Derek was already there, standing in the driveway. He looked nervous, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Hey," he said. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah, just hoping this goes well." "Me too." We walked inside together. My mother was in the kitchen wearing an apron, her hair pulled back. She turned when she heard us and smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. "Jessica, Derek, come in, come in." My father was setting the table. He looked up when I walked in and nodded. "Jess? Dad?" It was awkward at first. We all stood around in the living room making small talk about the weather and traffic. But then my mother called us to the table and we sat down. The pot roast was in the center, surrounded by bowls of vegetables and a basket of bread. "This looks amazing, Mom," I said. "I hope it tastes as good as it looks," she said, her voice a little shaky. We served ourselves in silence. Then my father cleared his throat. "I wanted to say something before we eat." We all looked at him. "I know the past few months have been difficult. For all of us. And I know that's mostly my fault and your mother's. We didn't see you, Jess. We didn't value you the way we should have. And I'm sorry for that." He looked directly at me, his eyes serious. "You built something incredible. You did it on your own, without our help, without our support. And instead of being proud, we were dismissive. We were wrong. And I hope you can forgive us for that." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I blinked them back. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. So proud. And we want to be part of your life, if you'll let us." I squeezed her hand. "I want that too." Derek raised his glass. "To new beginnings." We all raised our glasses. To new beginnings. The dinner wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, still conversations that felt forced. But there were also moments of genuine connection. My father asked about my business, and I told him about the new client. My mother asked about Adam, and I told her about how we met. Derek shared that he'd started seeing a therapist to work through some of his own issues, and we all supported him. It was a start. A real start. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey I'd been on. The visit home where I'd pretended to be someone I wasn't. The confrontation where I'd revealed the truth. The slow, painful process of rebuilding relationships that had been broken for years. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean. But it had been worth it. Because I'd learned something important along the way. I'd learned that my worth wasn't determined by my family's approval. It wasn't determined by their ability to see me or value me. It was determined by me. By the choices I made, the life I built, the person I chose to be. And that was enough. When I got back to my loft, Adam was waiting. He'd let himself in with the key I'd given him a few weeks earlier. He was on the couch, reading a book, and he looked up when I walked in. "How did it go?" he asked. I sat down next to him and leaned my head on his shoulder. "It went well. Really well." "I'm glad." "Me too." We sat there in the quiet, the city lights glowing through the windows. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who sat at the end of the table, invisible and silent. And I thought about the woman I'd become, the one who built a life on her own terms, who demanded to be seen and valued. They were the same person, in a way, but also completely different. And I was proud of both of them. The next few weeks were busy. The tech client's project was in full swing, and my team and I were working long hours to meet the deadlines. But I didn't mind. I loved the work. I loved the challenge. I loved the feeling of creating something that mattered. And in the quiet moments, I thought about my family, about the dinner we'd had, the conversations we'd started, the tentative steps toward healing. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was real. And that was all I could ask for. One afternoon, I was in my office when my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Hey, can I call you?" I called him back. "What's up?" "I wanted to run something by you." "Okay." "I've been thinking about making some changes. Big changes. I'm considering leaving my job, maybe starting my own thing. I don't know what yet, but I want to try. And I wanted to ask you how you did it. How you knew it was the right time." I smiled. "You never really know, Derek. You just have to trust yourself. Trust that even if it doesn't work out, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way." That's terrifying. It is. But it's also freeing. And once you do it, once you take that leap, you realize you're stronger than you thought you were. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Thanks, Jess, for everything. For not giving up on me. For showing me what's possible." "You're welcome. And for what it's worth, I think you should do it. I think you should take the leap." "I think I will." We talked for a few more minutes, and then we hung up. I sat there in my office, staring out at the city, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the fragile, uncertain kind, but the strong, steady kind. The kind that says, whatever happens next, I can handle it. Because I'd already handled so much. I'd built a life from nothing. I'd confronted my family and demanded to be seen. I'd rebuilt relationships that had been broken, and I'd learned to value myself, independent of anyone else's approval. And that was everything. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I thought about the future, about the company I was building, the relationships I was nurturing, the life I was creating. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because it was easy, not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. And that was enough. 6 months later, I stood in front of a room full of people I'd never met and told them my story. It was a conference for women entrepreneurs, held in a hotel ballroom in Chicago. The organizers had reached out months earlier, asking if I'd be willing to speak about building my business. I'd said yes without really thinking about it, and now here I was, standing on a stage with a microphone clipped to my collar and 300 faces looking up at me. "I started my company with $8,000 and a laptop," I said. "I had no investors, no safety net, and no idea what I was doing. But I had something more important than any of those things. I had the belief that I deserved to take up space." The room was quiet, attentive. I could see women nodding, leaning forward in their seats. For most of my life, I'd been taught to make myself smaller, to accept whatever crumbs of attention or validation came my way, to be grateful for being tolerated instead of demanding to be valued. And when I finally decided to stop living that way, everything changed. I told them about the visit home, about pretending to be broke, about the confrontation that followed. I told them about rebuilding relationships with my family, about learning to set boundaries, about choosing freedom over comfort. And I told them about the business I'd built, not because I was special or lucky, but because I refused to accept a life that didn't fit. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Women stood up. Some were crying. Afterward, dozens of them came up to me, sharing their own stories, asking questions, thanking me for being honest. One woman, probably in her late 40s, took my hand and said, "I needed to hear this. I've been making myself small my whole life." But not anymore. I squeezed her hand. "Good. The world needs to see who you really are." That night, I called Adam from my hotel room. He answered on the second ring. "How did it go?" he asked. "It was incredible. Scary, but incredible." I knew it would be. You're amazing, Jess. You know that, right? I smiled. I'm starting to. Good, because I've been thinking about something. What? I want you to move in with me, or I'll move in with you, whichever makes more sense. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a life with you. My breath caught. Adam, you don't have to answer right now. Just think about it. I don't need to think about it, I said. Yes, my place is bigger, so yours. Yes. I could hear the smile in his voice. Yeah? Yeah. We talked for another hour, making plans, laughing, dreaming about the future. When we finally hung up, I lay back on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling, feeling a happiness so complete it almost scared me. This was my life now. This was what I'd built. A few weeks later, Derek called. His voice was excited, almost manic. I did it, Jess. I quit my job. You did? I gave my notice yesterday. 2 weeks and I'm done. I'm terrified, but I feel alive. Like I can finally breathe. I'm proud of you, I said, and I meant it. I'm going to start consulting, help small businesses with their operations, that kind of thing. I'm not trying to build an empire like you did. I just want to do something that feels meaningful. That's all that matters. Thank you for showing me this was possible, for not letting me stay stuck. We talked for a while longer, and when we hung up, I felt that same sense of hope I'd felt months earlier. But stronger now, more certain. My family wasn't perfect. We still had awkward moments, still had conversations that felt strained. But we were trying, really trying, and that was more than I'd ever expected. On a cold December evening, my parents came to visit me in the city for the first time. I'd invited them to see my office, to meet my team, to see the life I'd built. My mother wore her best coat. My father looked uncomfortable in a tie. I gave them a tour, introducing them to Marcus and the rest of the team. They asked questions, genuine questions, and listened to the answers. When we got to my office, my mother stood by the window, looking out at the city. It's beautiful, she said quietly. You've built something beautiful, Jessica. Thank you, Mom. My father cleared his throat. I'm sorry it took me so long to see this, to see you. I know, Dad. I want to do better. I want to be the father you deserve. I walked over and hugged him. He stiffened at first, then relaxed, his arms coming up to hold me. You're trying. That's what matters. That evening, we had dinner at my loft. Adam cooked. He was much better at it than I was. We sat around the table, the four of us plus Adam, talking and laughing. It felt strange and wonderful at the same time, like we were creating something new, building a relationship from scratch instead of trying to repair one that had been broken. When my parents left, my mother hugged me tightly. I love you, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. I love you too, Mom. After they were gone, Adam and I cleaned up the kitchen together. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. That went well, he said. It did. You okay? Yeah, I'm really okay. And I was. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd finally learned to value myself. I'd learned that my worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval. It came from within, from the choices I made, the life I built, the person I chose to be. As the year drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on everything that had changed. The visit home that had started it all. The confrontation that had torn everything open. The slow, painful process of rebuilding. The business that continued to grow. The relationship with Adam that deepened every day. The tentative but real connections with my family. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments when I'd wanted to give up, to walk away, to protect myself by building walls instead of bridges. But I hadn't. I'd stayed open, I'd stayed honest. And in doing so, I'd created a life that felt authentic and whole. On New Year's Eve, Adam and I stood on my balcony, watching fireworks explode over the city. The sky was alive with color, brilliant and fleeting. He pulled me close, and I leaned into him, feeling grateful for everything that had brought me to this moment. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. How far I've come. How much has changed." "Any regrets?" I thought about it. "No, not one." "Good, because I think next year is going to be even better." "Yeah?" "Yeah, I have a feeling." The fireworks continued, painting the sky in gold and silver. And as I stood there, wrapped in Adam's arms, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who sat at the end of the table, invisible and silent. The one who believed she had to earn the right to exist, to take up space, to matter. She was gone now. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who demanded to be seen, who built a life on her own terms and refused to apologize for it. And as the clock struck midnight and a new year began, I made a promise to myself to keep building, to keep growing, to keep showing up as the fullest, truest version of myself. Because I'd learned something profound over the past year. I'd learned that you don't need permission to be yourself. You don't need approval to pursue your dreams. You don't need validation to know your worth. You just need courage. Courage to stand in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Courage to set boundaries, even when people push back. Courage to build a life that reflects who you really are, not who others think you should be. And I had that courage now. It had been there all along, buried beneath years of conditioning and compromise. But I'd found it. I'd claimed it, and I wasn't letting it go. As the fireworks faded and the city grew quiet, Adam and I went inside. We curled up on the couch, wrapped in blankets, talking about our dreams for the year ahead. New clients for the company. Maybe a vacation, somewhere warm and beautiful. Moving in together, officially, combining our lives in ways both practical and profound. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, my head on Adam's shoulder, I felt something I'd been searching for my entire life. Peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, that you've fought for your place in the world and won, that you've built something real and lasting and true, and that no one, not your family, not society, not even your own fears, can take that away from you, because it's yours, and you earned it. To anyone reading this who feels invisible, who feels like they have to shrink themselves to be accepted, who feels like their worth is determined by someone else's approval, you are enough, exactly as you are. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to earn the right to exist. You just need to believe in yourself enough to take the first step. And when you do, everything changes. Thank you for reading my story. I hope it reminds you of your own strength, your own power, your own worth, because you have it. You've always had it. You just have to claim it.